Is this SYRINE's memory? I regained vision and my sense of having a body returned, but it was moving on its own. It was near pitch black, but my transhuman eyesight picked up the infrared light and I moved like a ghost in a very dark and ominous tunnel leading into an eternal-looking void. While running, I managed to catch glimpses of my hands. They were delicate-looking appendages. This was definitely her memory. Suddenly she leapt over an unseen edge in total darkness. It was so abrupt I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Cold air rushed by and she did what seemed to be an impossible landing on another ledge with me watching it from a first-person view. This was like parkour but on steroids, added insane difficulty and triple the speed. I had a glance below and all that my vision registered was a bottomless void. Before I could even finish my soundless scream, she did another few more inhuman leaps and landings as she kept going at it in near-total darkness. This level of body control. I was stumped on what a Primarch-level body could achieve with its full potential unleashed. SYRINE continued to move forward in the darkness and gradually, I was able to sense her thoughts. Today was the important day when she could finally talk with her creator again. She had made that resolve. Only one thing was in her mind, its intensity was seared into me even in this memory of a vision. Father. The little Primarch Minoris was holding that thought while she marched ever forward into the darkness. Wellmanna bolted up from her bed with a muffled scream. The immediate sensation she felt was the unbearable chill biting into her skin. In the delirium of her half-awakened state, she struggled to recall if the temperature control of her room had been tampered with. The scholar took in a few quick breaths before realizing the reason for the plummeting warmth. Her room had stayed the same, but she was drenched in sweat and her nightgown was soaked through. She uttered some silent prayers, took in a few more deep breaths to control her ragged breathing before dragging herself to the water closet. Feeling better after dousing her face with cold water, Wellmanna slowly raised her head and had a proper look at the mirror. A horrible visage of her own reflection stared back and the first thing she noticed was that her eyes were all red. The last time Wellmanna remembered seeing her eyes in this shade of red was after she bawled her eyes out as a result of receiving harsh disciplinary action from a sister superior. She was still a novitiate then and had did something stupid that was more than a decade ago. For a few days now, whenever Wellmanna closed her eyes, a series of tormenting images kept appearing before her. That day, in the aftermath of a duel not meant for mortal eyes, their once vibrant holy daughter was found in a nightmarish landscape covered in mud, looking lifeless with dried blood all over her face. Verita and the others had sprung into action. After determining SYRINE was just barely alive, there was this mad scramble of all available resources to send her to the closest complete medical bay located at the Sororitas Fortress Monastery. Wellmanna, being neither a hospitaller nor having any useful skill to contribute at that time, could only watch helplessly from the sideline. She had felt nothing but numbness at those crucial moments. Now, the scholar felt as if that indescribable feeling of helplessness together with the unforgettable scenes had been seared into her soul, slowly eating her from the inside out. As a Dialogos scholar attached to the Order of the Shining Beacon, Wellmanna had dreamt of meeting the Holy Daughter ever since she was introduced to the prophecy. 1,000 years had passed since the prophecy was first mentioned. Countless Dialogos sisters had gone before her waiting for such a privilege, and the truth was Wellmanna had never expected it was during her time that it became true. For a brief moment in time, Wellmanna had the mental image of a future where she would quietly grow old, raising the next generation of Adepta scholars and passing the prophecy down to them. Admittedly, that mirage of a quiet life was shattered as one dramatic event unfolded one after another, and things went downhill pretty fast from there. First, her mentor had suddenly passed away in her prime, leaving Wellmanna as the de facto scholar in charge of handling their order's records regarding the prophecy despite her junior position. Then the Civil War broke out, throwing her relatively stable universe into a world of disarray. As the junior scholar was learning to navigate this new world of uncertainties, out of the blue the Canonus had ordered her to accompany the newly promoted probationary Palatine Alysia to verify her claim of a newly surfaced candidate for the prophesied Holy Daughter. Wellmanna was skeptical at first, since the Alysia she personally knew could be such a hot-head at times, and it was not the first time the Order had dealt with such possibilities only to be proven false later. While on their way to the fortress, Alysia shared her story and it intrigued Wellmanna. The candidate's tragic loss of memory during the dramatic gunfight at the inner sanctum was something Wellmanna could not wrap her mind around. It felt like there was more to the story, so she waited with bated breath to meet with this mysterious figure. When Wellmanna finally met SYRINE, she still could not wrap her mind around what she saw. The candidate exuded a level of presence that could only be described as saintly, but her ultra-casual demeanor towards the sisters carried none of the gravitas one would be expecting from a fabled true daughter of the Emperor. As a scholar, Wellmanna had counted no less than 5 violations of basic etiquette broken by the candidate on the first time they had met. SYRINE had openly greeted Alysia cheerfully back then. It was a very basic knowledge in high society. Proper greetings should be initiated by the lower-ranking individual even in a private setting. Surely the Emperor's daughter should know better. Then the bombshell of her medical examination result hit, confirming SYRINE was no mere human but a transhuman, so advanced one could not even tell by her appearance. The sister Hospitaller who had accompanied them on that mission had even secretly confided with Wellmanna later that she saw no signs of any postoperative marks on SYRINE, a fact which should have been impossible. Most imperial transhumans usually underwent so many surgeries their body was usually littered with such marks. Just as they were already having a hard time keeping their jaws closed, it was further revealed SYRINE had an unknown organ inside her brain that was certified by the Inquisition record to be found only in Primarchs. Wellmanna's mind had gone blank as she processed all the information that was laid before her. The fact that SYRINE had still maintained her casual stance made the scholar's reality even more jarring on that day. A sister of the mythical Primarchs, a true daughter of the Emperor of mankind. The scholar had read all that she could about the Primarchs, barring those who were labeled heretical anyway. To Wellmanna they were such aloof figures, they might as well be just pure legends than historical facts if not for the plentiful of statues around that constantly reminded them such beings once walked amongst mortals. All the Primarchs she knew were larger-than-life figures, sons of their god Emperor and superhuman in more ways than one. They led legions of space marines on a galaxy-spanning crusade and brought countless worlds into the embrace of Imperium. And here was a person who could be a younger sister of the mythical Primarchs, and she was interacting with them like peers bantering in a postgraduate ceremony. Feeling totally out of her depth, the scholar reported back to Canonus Diadinal what she saw, praying to the Emperor himself she was not making a colossal mistake. Finally the meeting between SYRINE and the holiest relic of their order, the nameless sword, happened. Any lingering doubts were burned away by the pure blue flame manifesting on the sword, illuminated by the golden halo of their holy daughter. Wellmanna finally understood what some of the ancient Legiones Astartes who had amicable relation with their Primarch must have felt when they were finally united with their gene father. Their order was finally whole again, and now the true work can begin. There were still many lingering important questions, however, due to the issue of memory loss and the urgent matter of rebellion. All these were put on the back burner. It was then that Wellmanna saw for the first time the true brilliance of SYRINE. Despite clearly not operating at her full capacity, the Holy Daughter quickly orchestrated cooperation between the sororitas, the Mechonicus and the Inquisition with an ingenious plan to deal with the uprising rebels. The sight of various imperial establishments famous for their internal squabbles coming together and working seamlessly under SYRINE's leadership for a common goal was breathtaking. The scholar was watching from the side, dazzled. Thinking back, that first direct Vox call Wellmanna received from SYRINE had to be the most nerve-wracking Vox conversation she had in her life. Before Wellmanna could organize her thoughts, she was back in SYRINE's room. The short time they had spent together rummaging through the collection of clothes was the most surreal event the scholar had experienced in her life. There she was, picking up an outfit for the Holy Daughter from her otherworldly collection of apparel. SYRINE was again talking to her in a way as if the lowly scholar was her peers when it was just the two of them around. Wellmanor was even offered to keep an outfit as a gift. It had petrified her back then. As a scholar, the true cost of such apparel was beyond her, but she had guessed one might not even be able to acquire these with any amount of currency. Surprising Wellmanor further, SYRINE had even bothered to learn the high society greetings from their world to show proper respect for the governor and her generals. The scholar found herself totally blown away by the Holy Daughter's modesty and kindness. In the dark days that followed, when it was unclear if SYRINE could recover, Wellmanor found herself in a working frenzy. With the blessing from her canoness, the scholar was going around collecting every bit of information she could about SYRINE's actions during that fateful day. From the information she gathered, it was understood the combined might that had gathered under SYRINE could easily annihilate the rebels from the beginning. However, instead of taking that easy route, SYRINE had gone the extra mile, providing many chances of salvation for the misguided fools. The subsequent Chaos Ritual incident had only further proven SYRINE's seemingly boundless wisdom and foresight. The scholar was sure of it. In a way, Wellmanor was stumped. She never would have guessed the Holy Daughter to be so humane. Being humane, it was a description so rarely used these days. Even as a scholar, she had to triple verify the proper meaning of the word. Wellmanor vividly remembered what might be the last time she saw SYRINE alive and well, stepping out from a safe zone to face a greater demon alone. Watching that petite silhouette walking fearlessly into the distance, the scholar believes she caught a glimpse of what could have been a new beginning for their stagnant Imperium. With such a person gluing the different power factions of the Imperium together, maybe, just maybe, things could start to change for the better. A new dawn for their galaxy mired by the never-ending wars, new hope in a sea of endless darkness. But that glimmer of hope was fading now. It had been days now, but no information was coming forth after they had secured the heavily wounded Holy Daughter in their monastery. What if the SYRINE could not recover from her injuries? That very thought made Wellmanor feel difficult to breathe. For the past few days and nights, she prayed like the fate of the world had depended on it. "Oh please, our eternal undying Lord and Saviour, I pray to thy grace, glorious Emperor of mankind. Please grant us strength, point us to the path, show us the light, preserve us. No, I only pray for one miracle now. Dear Lord, please save your own daughter." Suddenly a familiar buzz broke her stupor. It was her personal communication device, and Alysia was shown as the caller. At this hour? Surely it could not be. "Yes?" she answered with a shaking voice. "Wellmanor, are you alone?" Alysia's anxious voice came through. The tone of her voice bodes ill news. "Yes, I am alone. What happened?" "Sister," Alysia said, "stay calm now, but I just received special permission to inform you of this. Lady SYRINE is." Wellmanor felt like a lightning had struck her. For a split second it felt like an eternity before Alysia's next word came through, "missing." "Wellmanor? Are you there?" Say again? Missing?" "Yes, she went missing. I was just notified that her bed was found empty. Kira is freaking out, both the Canonus and Dominus are furious. The monastery is about to go into full alert and lockdown if we do not find her soon. I am heading there now. Just in case, do you happen to know anything about it?" "Don't be absurd. How can so many guards with around-the-clock security not know anything when Lady SYRINE had finally awakened and just walked away?" "I will take that as a negative. Alysia out." It was only after a while Wellmanor realized she was hyperventilating and staring blankly at her personal device. So many questions were going through her mind, but no answer would ever come if she just stood around. Impossible as it was, a highly secured patient had gone missing under the nose of numerous guards posted by both Adeptus Sororitas and Adeptus Mechanicus after staying in a medical coma for days. Missing. That would mean SYRINE was probably up, alive and walking about. The scholar then recalled the brief glimpse of a new world she had seen and found herself wishing fervently to never lose the chance to witness such a sight again. "I will go find her myself." Her resolve made, Wellmann quickly cleaned herself up, donned her scholar uniform and headed out just as the barest hint of sunlight broke the darkness on the horizon. It was still very dark outside, but she was determined to look for the daughter of her god emperor. Hurrying her footsteps, the scholar set off, chasing for a new dawn for the Imperium of Man. Characters: Adeptus Mechonicus, Dataliad Ving, Tech Priest, Kira Heptrix, Scutari Alpha, Cryptora Cycle, Archtech Priest Dominus. Adeptus Auroritas, Order of the Shining Beacon, Alisire Sabatith, Probationary Palatine, Diadonar Grace, Canonus, Marquila Merit, Celestian Superior, Sophia Obeio, Seraphim Excelsior. Wellmann Amir, Sister Dialogus. Inquisitorial Warband. Amel Frieden, Interrogator, Retinue. Herlindia Winson, Acolyte, Retinue. Fulton Merdini, Sanctioned Psyker, Retinue. Leandra, Imperial Assassin, Retinue. Tassia Bernades, Pilot, Retinue. Thabrus Thorn, Inquisitor, Ordo Hereticus. Zali Hennard, Sanctioned Psyker, Retinue. Runtor Crane, Henchman, Retinue. Verita Kern, Sister Hospitaller, Retinue. New Squamese. Aradas Rain, Astropath. Cartelina von Cleus, Planetary Governor. Grand Northern Army. Borin Yalstin, Rearguard General. Cathan von Cleus, Lord. Luther von Norden, Lord General. Probationary Palatine Alisire Sabatith found herself preparing to do what was previously unthinkable, guiding yet another psyker into the heart of her monastery. Desperate times had called for desperate measures. It had been a few days after the conclusion of the battle for Nusquam, and Alisire watched impassively beside Inquisitor Thabrus as the gunship Flame Raven banked and turned expertly before slowly landing on the fortress monastery's primary landing pad. The powerful downward draft of the gunship caused the robes, coats and purity seal parchments of the people waiting nearby to flutter furiously. Upon landing, a side door of the Flame Raven opened and two figures appeared. An elderly lady gingerly stepped forth, accompanied by a young boy. The pair fumbled slightly down the extended stairs to stand before their hosts. Alisire took extra note of the slightly hunched old lady who seemed way past her prime, but conceded to the fact that a psyker's capacity is not dependent on their physical ability. Appearance-wise, the lady was quite short and not much taller than the accompanying boy. She wore a standard imperial stormcoat embellished with an inquisitorial emblem. Her eyes were covered behind a pair of round shades while a tall psychic hood rose to loom over her frail features. Master Thabrus, the elderly lady began to perform a deep bow towards the trenchcoat-wearing inquisitor who waited at the forefront of the group, but her action was cut short by the man himself. The usually stern inquisitor walked over, gently helped up the bowing lady and asked softly, "Magie, it has been a while. How are you feeling?" Surprising Alisire, Inquisitor Thabrus had spoken with a tone more akin to someone meeting a senior member of the family than a master greeting his servant. "Thanks to Zaki, the worst has passed. It seems like I will be sticking around to continue my service," the old lady replied with a smile while reaching towards the young boy who came with her, but as her hand touched the boy she recoiled suddenly, as if she had just grazed hot metal. Sorry, Zaki," she quickly apologized. The little boy, who was wearing a simple grey tunic, merely looked at the old lady with a blank expression and shook his head. "A pariah," Alisire noted. "I see his null powers are growing, we might need to get an inhibitor for him soon," Thabrus remarked. "Come, I will get you acquainted." The Inquisitor then turned to Alisire and formally introduced the old lady, Palatine Alisire. "This is Throne Agent Jaime as mentioned in our previous discussions. With her help, we will have a better chance on the second attempt." Alisire nodded slightly before ignoring the newcomers. Due to indoctrination, professional indifference was the greatest courtesy she could conjure for them at the moment. The Palatine then remarked to Thabrus, "I pray for it to work this time too. It has been such a monumental task to have all the parties agree on the procedure in the first place." "Agreed, Palatine." We need her back as soon as possible. Fabris nodded and continued, Agent Hai was in a medically induced coma until recently due to all the happenings. Please see to her well-being while she is here in your care. That done, Fabris left with his party on board the Flame Raven. Some time later, in the most secured chamber within the monastery, Alisaya observed the gathering of 3 psychers and noted that while they did not speak much with one another, the relaxed body language of the old lady suggested she was glad to be reunited with Fulton and Zali. They must be communicating telepathically, Alisaya realized. In the aftermath of the Greater Demon's incursion, there had been a flurry of purity tests done on all the important people involved for possible warp taint. The young Palatine witnessed how the 2 psychers were worked to the bone, and even with her predisposition against witches, she felt a hint of sympathy for them. Before Alisaya realized it, she and most of Inquisitor Fabris' party had become fairly acquainted during the grueling period. Turning to the heavily augmented figure standing in the middle of the chamber, Alisaya asked in a vain hope for new developments. Margus, any changes? Margus Balpragius, who presided over the procedure, replied flatly, none. Despite her being in supposed perfect physical health for more than enough time, she still shows no signs of waking up. He then turned to Sister Hospitala Verita, who was standing nearby. All key personnel are present, we are ready to begin the second attempt. Throne willing, we will have better luck this time and wake her up from the inside, Verita Kern, who was overseeing the event for the Inquisition, remarked solemnly. Moments later, Alisaya observed the ongoing procedure with her arms crossed. From her point of view, all she could see was the 3 psychers gathered behind the Holy Daughter on her bed. Both Fulton and Zali had one hand each holding onto the shoulder of Yihai. The old lady was the only one who had both her hands lightly touching SYRINE's temples, and they had been at it for quite some time now. While Alisaya could not see what was really going on, judging by the strained expressions of all the psychers and the perspiration gathering on their foreheads, she suspected it was not going smoothly at all. The Palatine also noted with mild discomfort as the air inside the chamber seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment. Then the uneasy silence was broken by Balpragius' unexpected announcement. The patient is exhibiting unusual brain wave patterns. Before Alisaya could decide whether that was good news or bad, she noticed the psychers starting to shiver with even heavier perspiration. Is that normal? Alisaya wanted to ask, but the temperature inside the chamber abruptly plummeted. Alarmed by the unexpected event, the Palatine looked to the Sister Hospitala, who was supposedly more experienced in such procedures, and saw Verita's unconcealed surprised face, and then, bam! There was a bright flash accompanied by a shock wave, sending the psychers and medical tools flying. Verita screamed as a thin layer of frost formed instantly inside the medical bay, rapidly covering the floor and most surfaces except for SYRINE and her bed. Alisaya had raised her gloved hand just in time to shield her face from the blast. With clenched teeth she peeked into the direction of SYRINE, and to her horror witnessed a misty figure forming above the unmoving Holy Daughter. Alisaya silently cursed all the people who had assured the safety of the procedure and reached for her bolt pistol, but froze as she started to recognize the solidifying figure. Wait, this couldn't be. Alisaya's eyes widened and her jaw dropped. Trembling, she took a quick glance and confirmed that the pentagrammic wards that were installed inside the chamber by the Inquisition were still intact. This was no warp breach. The frozen marble rang crisply as Alisaya dropped to her armored knees, and hers were not the only one, as the sound of robed and armored knees falling to the floor echoed in the whole chamber. Alerted by the loud commotion, the Celestian squad guarding just outside the door stormed in with weapons raised, but upon witnessing the scene inside, the elite sisters too lowered their weapons and fell to their knees. There, above the unmoving Holy Daughter, was the translucent but unmistakably regal visage of the Emperor. The astral form of the Master of Mankind seemed to be made up of holy lights, shining with countless colors and flickering unstably before speaking in a voice that was heavy with displeasure. It was but a whisper, yet the weight behind the words boomed like thunder. Plus your presence here is not authorized. Plus, everyone flinched at the accusatory tone from the sovereign of their species, and in response some bowed their heads so hard they were slamming their foreheads onto the ground. Most if not all were trembling uncontrollably, Alisaya included. Just as they were expecting divine retribution, the manifestation together with a sudden frost quickly dissolved into the air, leaving a chamber of bewildered Imperials. Alisaya blinked, and then blinked again to confirm the phenomenon had ended. Breathing heavily, she slowly picked herself up from the floor, her sight refusing to leave the spot where he had once been. The Palatine remained stunned for a few more seconds before snapping back to her senses, and together with Verita she hurried to SYRINE, finding the Holy Daughter still unresponsive but otherwise unharmed. The Hospitaller quickly went through a series of checks on SYRINE before giving Alisaya a quick nod, signaling everything was fine. Sighing with relief, Alisaya asked, "Margus, status of the Holy Daughter?" The tech priest, who was standing utterly still during the whole event, uttered some binary before looking at his instruments, and after a while he gave a metallic reply. "Her status has reverted back to pre-procedure." "Are you sure?" "Confirmed, Palatine." Alisaya took another deep breath before walking towards the psychers who were still sprawled on the floor. She reached for the man by his collar, pulling him up and finding herself practically shouting with a hoarse voice, "What in the name of throne was that? Explain it to me now." The dazed psyker, blood flowing down from his nose and ears, simply held up his hands but did not reply. It was Yihai who coughed an answer on his behalf. "A moment please, sister. I can explain." After being helped up by Zali, the aged psyker took a moment to tidy up herself and went before SYRINE. She bowed deeply and whispered for forgiveness before talking in a shaky voice. "We weren't strong enough. Even with the three of us, our combined effort was like a breeze blowing at a fortress gate. We could not get in. So, we changed our approach. We pushed and pushed on her mental wall until a ripple was created, then we peeled at the highest point of that ripple with all our strength to look inside, but everything bounced back. And that created what we saw just now?" Alisaya pressed. Yihai nodded shakily. While SYRINE's legitimacy seemed to be proven yet again, her condition had remained the same. The bittersweet result had Alisaya wanting to pull her hair off in frustration, but instead she held her hands together and whispered a prayer. "By the Emperor's grace, please come back to us, Holy Daughter."